So I just barely made it on time here. Fintan got already a little bit nervous, and unfortunately we're running a big conference next week, so it's a crazy time. So what I want to talk about is containers, and as Fintan said, and he gave unfortunately my joke away, it's not these types of containers, which probably a lot of you thought when you saw the title on the presentation. No, actually we want to talk about the real physical large containers which you find for moving, hopefully, mostly in shipyards, ports, and so on. And I got into the story about 2 years ago, where together with James and Fintan, we ran a conference in Palo Alto. Okay, ran a conference in Palo Alto, IoT at scale. And we had this thing, let's get all the big things together, like cranes, trains, automobiles. And one of the stories we had, but it was a little bit early in the development, was about the port of Hamburg. And last year when I came here to ThingMonk, I did a presentation in general about what is currently going on in the big industry, in the enterprise, and what these companies are doing. And I had just a quick snapshot on the port of Hamburg, and a lot of folks approached me after the presentation and said, can you tell us a little bit more how you have this implemented, what were the challenges around it? And so now I'm back here and to dive a little bit deeper into what it means to move containers with IoT and what the customers are doing out there. So in general, moving containers is a growing business. And it's probably hard to read, but this is until 2013, what are the top ports in the world and how much they are shipping. And you can see pretty much every port is almost doubling in the last 10 years, how many containers they are shipping in and out of these ports. The top is mostly China and Singapore. There, I guess we're buying a lot from them. You're wondering where is Hamburg? Hamburg is number 15. They had about 9 million containers, and they went up since then. Guess for the UK folks, what do you guess is the biggest port in the UK? Felixstowe. It's on, I think, 35. So you can go to Wikipedia and check it out. But it's also interesting how these containers work, and there is a lot of logistical challenges behind it. So for the port of Hamburg, you saw it, they have about 9 million containers per year. That's roughly about 24,600 containers per day. And if you would line these up and put some space in between, then this line would go basically from Hamburg down to Berlin. And what they expect, how they want to grow the port in the next 10 years, is basically to 25 million containers per year. And that's almost 68,000 containers, and if you line them up, then you go from Berlin down to Munich. So it's a little bit not a totally correct picture, because a lot of containers also are moving by train, and they're moving also by other ships. And but you get the dimension on what these ports have to deal with. And the biggest dimension or the biggest challenge what most of these ports have, except if they're built new, is they have to work in an existing infrastructure. Like in Hamburg, you cannot really increase the port a lot by the water or the roads or the train tracks. You're almost at the limit. And that's why a lot of these ports are looking into IoT and really hoping for automation to really move these containers much more streamlined out. And what this thing is definitely there's many aspects of these containers and how they are all working together. So you have the ships, you have the trucks who need coming in, you have traffic jams, you have maybe parking overflow lots. So there's a lot of areas, and this is just the aspect on the road aspect. You can now envision also okay, some containers are moving by other ships, other containers are moving by trains. So this is a gigantic logistical undergoing what are these ports are doing. So that's basically what I presented last year, and now I want to go deeper into how these containers and how these ports are working. So what is really interesting, a lot of these ports are really advanced. And if you think like, okay, a port is something which runs more than 1,000 years, like they are really at the high end of a lot of like logistical technology. This website, unfortunately I have it so small, you probably have to wait until I have it on SlideShare, but Hamburg, for example, has a live view on all of the ships. So you can go there, check it out, and you see like where are the ships. Hopefully it's live enough that you really see them also moving. But you see like, this is like, it's different type of ships, and yeah, it's pretty busy what's going in and out of such a port. The other thing to understand by a port, and that was interesting when I talked to the business side, was a port is not controlled by one identity or one company. A port is basically, there is a so-called port authority, and they basically govern the whole port. It's kind of like they own the port. But then you have the different terminals, you have the cargo deposits, like a lot of like different companies working in this port, and they're all not connected. And that's a lot of like the biggest challenge for these logistic things, because you deal with a lot of business identities in such a port. And of course, as things are happening, the roads are partially blocked or like delays. That's like definitely what most of these ports are fighting with. So let's go a little bit deeper. So I talked about it a little bit. So you have the things where you pick up these containers. These are normally the terminals or the depots. The difference is the terminal has the full containers and gets the full containers. The depots are the empty containers. And you need to also deal with the empty containers. Then you have so-called logistics service providers. So these are not just only the truck companies. They really handle for these ports larger logistical things. And they often have subcontractors. So it's not that you deal with one company. You might deal with 20 logistical service providers who each of them has 50 subcontractors who are running the trucks, and one subcontractor has 20 trucks, the next one has 500 trucks. That's kind of like how the business is built out. And then you also have, like in this case in Hamburg, the parking spaces. This is for traffic optimization. This is controlled by the port itself. And they are all kind of like optimized via IoT. So terminals, they hide a lot what they're doing with IoT, and if I find someone who can tell me more, I'm definitely interested to talk to. The trucks all have like telematics systems now, so you really know what's going on. And the parking spaces, in this case, the port really invested to make it accessible, how many spaces are actually allocated with trucks and filled up with trucks. So let's look a little bit in how such a scenario and what we implemented together with the Port of Hamburg works. And one thing is like, first I came in and talked to the folks who implemented it. It's like, okay, what is it like, what data, what is it we track, what do we need to make this scenario working to optimize the logistical flow on getting these containers in and out of the port. So the first thing what you have is at the terminal, you have, like the terminals are operating their own systems in the background. And there are different bigger logistical terminal systems. There is, and I have this a little bit later on, a lot of optimization also going on in the terminals, but they basically run it always different, or a specialized software which handles this. So, but you need to know, for example, which are the containers which need to be picked up, when they are ready, and so on. So you need to have an interface and really integrate with these different systems via APIs. And that's also like a definitely a trend they're opening up. There could be more opening up of these companies, but they also, it's kind of like, what do I get out of providing more and more of this data? The next thing is like these logistics service providers. Basically, they have the trucks, or they control the trucks who need to pick up the containers later on. So they have also their own systems. These are dispatch systems, these are logistics systems. They might be from SAP, they might be from someone else. So it's also kind of like a Wild West on systems, and you basically have to get this information integrated via APIs. So the trucks itself, it's very advanced. Like most of the trucks now, either they really have full telemetric systems, and in the scenario with Hamburg, it was a fully telematic system, which also was provided in partnership with T-Systems. So all of these trucks, you basically know the location where they are, you know the speeds, and all of this information you can be transmitted via this telematic system into a centralized system. What is interesting, this gives you a lot of information, a lot of IoT information, which you can, or which was used later on in this application to optimize the flow. What else? The parking, we talked about it. This is like also very simple. You basically put either cameras, or the most thing is either done with radio or via the ground, that you really just like have an induction, that you figure out like how many parking slots are available. And nowadays, like they built a lot of these parking spaces new. They basically went fully in with IoT, so you knew exactly how many trucks can go in and which place is available. So it's a really modern parking garage, I would say. Other things, what is available in Germany is like public data is the traffic conditions. So you know, like if there is an accident on the road, if there is a delay, but also they started to collect some of the information from the trucks itself. You might have seen this from your own car navigation, that yeah, you get like the red flags on your map in the navigation if the car who uses the same navigation system before you drove through is a little bit slower. So you can get a lot of information also from these trucks, plus merging it with public data which is available out there. And other things, sorry, I went a little bit too far. There's also a lot of bridges in ports. And these bridges go up and down, and I have a story later on about one. They're not so small. They take a while until they go up and down. So how do you optimize now the logistical thing, and what did we implement? So this is like same thing like in the first scenario. What I want to do is I'm basically here in the terminal, and I need to get my container out. And what it was implemented in this case was basically, as a first phase, a so-called geofencing. So you build this geofence around your terminal, and you kind of like then know when are these when a truck would arrive. Of course, these trucks need to be before registered. You do this via the logistical service providers, and there's like certain service agreements that you have this data. So what's happening when the truck goes into the geofence, then the calculation is happening in the background. Is the container ready to be picked up? And in case it's ready to be picked up, you send via the telematic system to the truck driver exactly where they should go. So that's like they have like so and so many gates, and that needs to be optimized. You don't want to have them waiting at the gate and then blocking the road coming out and so on. So this is a very simple scenario, but it helps already the terminal to really bring the containers forward at the right speed, because it's not so easy to have like 50, 100 containers just waiting and then figure out like which truck can load this up. There's also a lot of like things going on about customs and so on, which need to go through, and it depends on how long. You basically want to get this container out really, really fast. So the next scenario is with the parking spaces, and in this case, it's also very simple. You build a geofence around the parking, so you know the truck is approaching the parking area. And in this case, we know that the gate is right now full. There's no gates available in the back end or at the terminal. So what we can do is we can also see, is there something available in the parking, and dispatch to the driver a message that they should go to parking lot number 7 in this case, and the estimated waiting time is 25 minutes. That's like one of the scenarios what you can do. And of course, that's what we discussed before with the public information about the traffic, or if there was a truck going through the same road before and it took them 25 minutes longer, I also have this information how long it will take me to get to the terminal. And in case I have a 25 minutes delay, I might want to push the truck out earlier. Good. So this is the only slide about SAP, because some people asked me before how you guys implemented this. The big concept behind it is basically we have an open platform which we use to implement this. And there's three criteria what we needed for the scenario and which was geared towards the platform. One, it's very open to integrate a lot of these other systems. So like on the backend system, with the terminals, with the dispatchers, and so on. The other thing is also for IoT. In the Hamburg port, we work together with the telemetric systems from T-Systems. So it needs to be also very open. And then one of the strengths what we have in the platform itself is like the capabilities of doing these really data-driven calculations very fast. And that helps us like really to do machine learning and optimizing how these truck routes should go. And there's still a lot of improvement going in. And that's definitely like one of the things what I'm encouraging a lot of the developers. It's very interesting to learn how this data, like IoT, like collecting the data is one thing. The really interesting part, what I see, is also like working with the data and really analyzing and doing something with the data. Okay, so a little bit more about ports, and this is like not the scenario what we implemented, but when I talk to some of the ports and our business folks, there's a little bit more going on with IoT in these ports. Automated vehicles and cranes. So now think about the terminal where they get the containers off the ship and need to put it onto a truck. These are automated vehicles. They're automated guided vehicles. They're moving. It's not yet in every port, but you have no drivers. Also these cranes, they're so-called stacking cranes, they're moving to completely automatic. So the only manual step is the crane who takes it from the ship and clears it and puts it onto the ground. The rest is all moved by this stuff and automatic cranes. And this is like a lot of like IoT behind the scenes, which moves the containers really rapidly forward. The next thing is, this is from the port of Rotterdam. What they implemented, and it's also important for the ships coming in, a lot of like data on what's the current flow, the wind, and that's very important. Like if you have to navigate all these ships into the port, and this is like publicly available, so you can also integrate it. Definitely also Port of Rotterdam, if you're interested, check out their website. They do a lot of investments in startups, technology. They really want to improve their port with the latest technology. And another example in there is, like, yeah, they have a challenge to open this gigantic bridge, and they need to predict what's the best time to open this bridge. And there's like machine learning, AI going into these areas. So I hope I made you a little bit more curious about IoT in the ports. There is a lot of, and it's good, there's a lot of open data available, or partially open, like some of these companies are charging. But here's like, this is like if you need to figure out where your ship is, you can get it via API. And finally, if you want to hack in a port, there is one coming up in December in Antwerp, in Belgium. Good beer as well. So good beer, port, the real port, not the other port, and a hack. It's second weekend in December. We are supporting them because we also see like a lot of like innovation coming out of this. And yeah, if you want to hop over and join us for a weekend of hacking a port, I would be very interested to see you there. So with that, I want to say thank you. I will put the slides on slideshare.net, and it's Thomas GR, and should be there tonight or tomorrow. Thank you.